On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, Kyle, do you know how we know that the NHL season is back, really back? Of course, we have preseason hockey, but the morning leftovers are back. Let's bring those out. New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in, making this your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. And make sure you're following us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram, and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. Make sure you subscribe to our subtext as well. Link to that's in the show notes below. And when you do chat with Kyle and I one-on-one, we get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast. Sir, we'll do that as well during the course of this episode. We're going to get to, there was a fan poll that we did a couple weeks ago done by The Athletic. Well, now they always do a player poll. So we'll dive into that a little bit. Some interesting things in there. The Amazon Face-Off show right around the corner, and they released the episodes, the titles, and the players involved in each one of those episodes. So we'll get to that because Gabe Landeskog is involved with that, obviously. But where we're going to start today, sir, is like I said in the opening, Kyle and I, if you're new to Locked On Avalanche, or if you're an everydayer, you know this. But if you're new, Kyle and I, after the day after a game, we always dive into the fridge and take out the morning leftovers and go over a little bit, nothing too crazy, just things that stuck with us about the game the day before. And I know this is a preseason game, but hey, it has meaning. You know what I mean? Like we were talking about it in yesterday's episode with the prospects that are playing, and you know what that entails for them, where they go from here. So just the things that stuck with us from the most recent game. Let's start there. Well, anything that when you woke up this morning, you were like still thinking about, good or bad, for that game against Dallas?
You know, I'm going to throw you a curveball here, my friend.
All right.
My morning leftovers, and I literally woke up about it. And I spent the day doing school, so I was in a sportscasting mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Why was the broadcast the way it was in that preseason game?
You're hearing a lot of that. A lot of people were not happy with it, and I'm kind of with them. You know what I mean? Like at first when I was watching it, I'm like, oh, they're just like, and I said it in the episode yesterday. They're just doing what they need to do in the preseason, and they're just getting their graphics done. You saw them just put the name with the arrow just on random players. It wasn't anything, and so I'm like, okay, they're just getting in the flow of a game, but it's also like this is like people were excited for this, and people were, you know, this was the first like genuine hockey game, even though it's a preseason game. People tune in for this stuff. I feel like all the parties involved should have been a little bit better prepared for this, and at least just give us the bare minimum of just give us a couple announcers and a score bug. You could at least do that, right?
And that's my follow-up question. I was anticipating you saying that. Who's preseason game? Who was training in this? Clearly wasn't Altitude. Clearly wasn't like Victory. I know they had some feed somewhere. Never heard the announcers. Why did ESPN go with this? Was this the only one available? And this is preseason. The announcers also get the work in the preseason. You can't tell me that Altitude wasn't prepared for this because Connor was on the radio. So
right.
What? And again, this goes back to what's going on with Altitude. Who's Katie's replacement? What is going on with Altitude, and why did we watch a preseason game basically from a video board feed on ESPN Plus?
Yeah, it just seems like they either, if they weren't, I don't want to say they were not prepared for it, because it wasn't like an Altitude broadcast. It was just what was up on the Jumbotron. They just threw out there, which in some regard, I appreciate that because we were able to watch it. ESPN did and went and did what they did by cutting the feed off early. But I don't know. It just seems like people just threw in the towel on this. And it's like you have all these people that really cared, that were really excited to finally watch Avalanche hockey. Who cares if it was the first preseason game? And there was no one there to like share it with almost, like no one that like you get the excitement of listening to announcers and I initially I thought it was going to be the Stars feed and the Stars announcers that ESPN put up. So, and it wasn't that either. It was the Avalanche side of it. But I don't know, man. I just feel like it's just a bad look to start, even though it's preseason. I know that. But I don't know. I just think it's an ugly way to kind of start things. When can you imagine if the NFL did that?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like 2 years ago, I was doing radio broadcasts with AHL teams.
Mm-hmm.
We were there, TV and everything for preseason. That's AHL. Why is the NHL? I wonder if that had something to do with them cutting the feed in the third period. Hey, this is not what we anticipated for a broadcast. There's no audio coming through here. Like the producer finally paid attention to that screen and said, why aren't we getting any audio? We haven't had audio all game long. Let's just pull the plug on this. Something's wrong here. And they just kind of cut their losses. It felt weird. And there has been no explanation to why.
Yeah. I mean, if they came out with an explanation, I just feel like it would have just been, we didn't really want to put the resources into covering this game, and you're lucky you got what you got.
You could have put Connor. You could have put Connor's radio feed on the broadcast.
Could have done that.
It's an easy thing to do.
You absolutely could have done that. And like I'm saying, I'm just give me that, because like you said, you have Connor. Connor is doing it on the radio side. Overlay his on the video side and just throw up a simple score bug. So we know what the time is. We know when penalties are about to run out. We know what the score is. I don't know. I know we're complaining about a preseason game, but again, it's the first game that everybody's kind of flocking to because they're excited that hockey's back. Heather over on Subtext pointed this out. She said they cut it off at the 2-hour mark if you look at the recordings of it. So I wonder if there was something there where it's like, we'll give you this feed, but only for 2 hours. And I don't know if that was 2 hours to the minute. It could have been, but yeah, she pointed that out, that right at the 2-minute mark or the 2-hour mark, they shut it down.
And like, and coming from somebody like, again, I used to work like production and stuff, like the halftime graphic, like a lot of that production, like behind the scenes, like being a consumer, somebody who's watching, it felt panicky. And when it hit that 2-hour mark, it felt like, oh, they're not adjusting things on their end. We'll just go ahead and just can it here. Yeah.
It was weird. Weird that they went down that road, but we've had preseason games that we can't watch at all. So I do appreciate that we're actually, able to watch this in some capacity, but you didn't have all the bells and whistles. And, obviously you're going to get those down the road. Player wise, on the ice, Avalanche, and anybody that you're kind of thinking like, hey, good start, or the opposite of that as well.
No, it's honestly what you want. Nobody really played their way out of it, and nobody really, like, even thinking about it today, that nobody really jumped off the page and you're like, oh my goodness, nobody solidified or hurt their chances. And again, it's the first preseason game. You like to see it ratchet up a little bit. But again, I was also thinking, if this is a game with Mikko and Nate and Lecky, and just insert your favorite player name here. If I was watching this, I would be entertained for 5 minutes. And then I'd be like, okay, that's enough. I don't want them hurt now. Let's get this over with. Like, it was nice to see so much of the prospects, and probably guys you won't see in an Avalanche sweater for probably the rest of the year. But at some point, you're like, okay, this is fun, but can we be done?
See, I don't get that way, because I mean, I just want, I'd watch games all day, every day. But I don't know. I feel like Annunen had a really good day. I think that was a good start for him. And I think it's important for him, even though, like, he's not going up against the best of the best, but he doesn't have a lot of games under his belt either. So the jury's still out on him. So I feel like even though he's going up against a lot of prospects, a lot of AHL guys, to him having good games all throughout these playoffs, I think is really important for him to carry that into the regular season when the games count and you're up against better competition. So I feel like he had a good game, but yeah, I don't hold. We were talking yesterday about we didn't think that Foodie played particularly well, but am I counting him out? No, like this is what the guys that played maybe not as well as they wanted to, they still have games left in this preseason to turn that around. And the opposite is true. The guys that played well, they have to continue that too throughout the playoffs because you're not going to make all these decisions after one game. No. So I don't throw all the eggs in one basket after one preseason game. There was good, there was bad, there was ugly, there was some nice moves, some good moves. It's what you're going to get in a preseason game. You just see what carries over per person. What carries over to the second game for the guys that did well and the guys that did poorly? How do they follow that up and then follow it up again and again and again? And that's how you make your roster.
And you're not knee jerking the end of that game either. That I finally got to go back and watch and see how that transpired. You're not like, oh, doom and gloom. The defense is terrible. This is another year of misassignments. No, it's preseason. They probably didn't even know what time was in the game. And if ESPN kept it up there, we would have had no idea because there's no score bug. So you could have told me there was 2 minutes left in that game and I would have believed you.
I asked the Subtext crew, what's their one? We did this too also during the regular season. Like, what's your one-word summary of this game? And here's some of them. Kay said rusty. Avs fan forever just said hockey. Free exclamation. There you go. There you go. So Marie said unwatchable, and not in that it was so bad. I couldn't watch it because I literally could not figure out how or where to watch it.
No,
it was on ESPN Plus. I don't know if she subscribes to that or not, but yeah. So more struggles when it came to the first preseason game. Heather said, "My word is GOAT, and not in the acronym GO, as in it seemed like the guys were all following each other and crowding around one another like goats." First game down, and a few more to see what these rookies and PTO players can do. That's a funny one.
And I want to circle back to real quickly Marie's point about not knowing where to watch. It's another thing on altitude. Somebody, either Avalanche or altitude, needs to pick up the ball and say, hey, even if it's not an altitude broadcast, this is where you can enjoy your Colorado Avalanche. Somebody, just because altitude is not going to be there representing, somebody needs to say, if you would like to watch your Avalanche, you can watch here or Victory Plus. Somebody needs to message that so we're not all looking everywhere and somebody discovers, hey, it's on ESPN Plus, and everyone rushes over to it 5 minutes in the game. Somebody needs to step up and say, if you want your game, it's on ESPN Plus or Victory Plus.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that it was going to be on the radio. They pumped that out a lot. You knew that. But the fact that there was a streaming version of it, you didn't really, that word kind of spread, amongst the fan base.
Yep.
You didn't really know that. So kind of odd, just an odd way to start the first preseason game. And finally, Tanya, she just said blackout. That was her one-word summary for the game. Well, we're talking about that more than the actual game, which is not how it should be, but that's where we're at. All right. One thing that is not going to get blacked out is this new Amazon show, which I think October 4th, I believe it starts on Amazon. And they released the episodes and kind of a brief, like one sentence summary of, the show titles and the players involved in those episodes. And we'll go over those coming up next. All right, let's hear from FanDuel and NFL fans. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, which is, of course, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check on the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. What are we thinking for the Broncos? Do you think they can follow that up? That was an impressive showing going up against the Jets. They are, I think, a touchdown underdog.
And Aaron Rodgers is already flapping his mouth. I'm picking the Broncos.
Is he? What's he saying?
He said, the defense is showing things, but we're going to be well prepared for him. He's already talking over, and I do not like Aaron Rodgers, so I am doubling down on the Broncos.
Okay. All right. Let's see if they can. 2 weeks in a row going to the East Coast is not easy to do.
No.
But we will see. So if you want to bet on that, obviously head on over to FanDuel where you can get your $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bets over at FanDuel.com. All right. New show coming to Amazon Prime called NHL Face Off. And of course you're going to think of the movie. I don't know why they named it that. And then if you're searching for it, you're just going to get John Travolta, Nick Cage. But whatever. And they released a trailer for it, about a 1.5-minute trailer. And yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen the trailer, go seek it out and find it because it gets me excited to want to see this. I wanted to see this anyway, because I'll eat up anything that's like behind the scenes, especially it has to do with hockey. But this looks like it's going to be a good, fun, entertaining show. I look forward to, hopefully we get many seasons of this. I hope they do this after every season and into every off season. Because this is a look behind the curtain, and this is what you don't get a lot of in the NHL world. And at the very end of this trailer, you have Connor McDavid going bonkers in the locker room. Like, all right, we're back. A lot of craziness going on with the interwebs over here. But anyway, I don't know where it cut out, but basically I was saying you don't get a lot of behind the scenes, behind the curtain stuff. And Connor, at the end of the trailer, Connor McDavid is going bananas. He's screaming his head off. And we kind of make fun of him and hockey players in general for just being monotone and not, not really shown a lot of emotion, at least in interviews and stuff like that. But that was like, I want to see more of that guy and doing stuff like that.
And see, McDavid it's interesting to see this, especially like he's in a commercial now and he is like one tone. I don't even think he blinks. Yeah. He's emotionless. But this was a question that came up. What do you guys do in the off season to get through? One of the things I do is I rewatch like that Quest for the Cup that ESPN puts out at least all the way through like 2 or 3 times, because you get a lot of behind the scenes on the coaches. It feels kind of, I don't know, propaganda-ish. Like it's not too in-depth, but it's carrying on the storyline of the playoffs. Seeing it this way and what they did with the Leafs not too long ago was also very interesting. I would like to see it, and I'm very excited to see, especially with these pairings, to see these players be human.
Yes, I think that's a good word for it, because they're very robotic when in any other aspect of just doing interviews and stuff like that. So here's the episode rundown. There's 6 episodes, and that's the other thing. We didn't know if it was just going to be like, here's the players involved over the course of the entire series, but it doesn't seem to be that way. It just seems like for each episode, they follow a couple different players, and then that's their episode. So for episode 1, it's entitled Best of Rivals. That has Willie Nylander and David Pastrnak. Episode 2 is As Tough as It Gets. That's got Philip Forsberg and Jack Eichel. Episode 3, Learning to Win. That has Jeremy Swayman. That should be titled Learning to Sign a Contract, I guess. And Matthew Tkachuk. And episode 4, that is the one that Avalanche fans are going to key in on. That's called The Captains. That has Quinn Hughes, Gabe Landeskog, and Jacob Trouba. We'll get back to that. Episode 5 and 6 is a 2-parter. It's called Cup or Bust 1, Part 1, Cup or Bust 2, or Part 2. Part 1's got McDavid, Draisaitl, and Hyman. Part 2 has Kachuk and Kachuk and McDavid. So those last two are clearly, revolving around the Stanley Cup, which is, that should be kind of exciting to watch. All of them should be exciting to watch. The episode with Gabe Landeskog, Quinn Hughes, him and Trouba. It's kind of like the yin and yang. Like even Quinn Hughes is a likable guy. Gabe Landeskog is a very likable guy. Jacob Trouba is hated. So I think that's kind of a great dynamic to put on one episode. And Trouba, is he that guy that on the ice is hated and then off it seems like a pretty nice guy? It does seem that way. And then just when he steps on the ice, something just snaps and he just, he's out to, rip somebody's head off. So maybe, this would be good for him so people can see a different side of him. But it is kind of an odd dynamic between the three people that they have in this episode.
Yeah, and I wonder how much screen time Landy's actually going to get between these guys, because you're also going to have game tape on everybody else, and you're going to have Landy trying to make that return. And I'm interested to see how they put this together storyline wise and production wise. Like, you have Quinn, who is now on the cover of the video game, Trouba, who's on the cover of every article about dirty plays in the game, and you have Landeskog trying to come back. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be a homer here, but I would have more interest in what Gabe Landeskog's story is than the other two. Not that the other two are not interesting, but Quinn Hughes, like, yeah, that's a good story, but you get that every year. You get a guy who's, playing for, he's having a great season and up for a Norris Trophy or whatever trophy. Like, sure, good story, but there's going to be someone in that role this year as well. The Trouba one is very interesting just because of whenever you have a villain, people are going to tune into that. So, and with Landeskog, I think, I'm sure they'll get equal billing, the three of them, but I think a lot of people are going to want to see a guy who hasn't played in 2 years, still trying to, come back. How is that going? And there's going to be some drama there, or maybe not drama, just anxiety from people watching him. Every move he makes, is that going to set him back? Clearly, we know that where he is right now, but there might be some tension watching Gabe Landeskog in the early stages of his recovery. So I'm interested to see that, and I'm interested to see the Trouba part of it, and to try to make someone human. If anybody needs to make themselves human, it's Jacob Trouba.
Yeah, and I'd like to see that Canucks locker room, but I'm very interested to see what the conversation is like nationally, like hockey fans in general, and how much Gabe Landeskog, what that name actually carries around just like general hockey fans, instead of just like, oh yeah, I remember him. Like, I wonder if that's kind of the sentiment, and it's just like we anoint Gabe Landeskog so high in Avalanche circles that it's inflated for us because, yeah, it's an Avalanche representative, but I wonder how much it equates to the hockey fan at large.
Yeah. And I also do the episode 2 with Philip Forsberg and Jack Eichel. That one for me is going to be tough because I really like Philip Forsberg. I think he's just a cool guy, someone that you could really hang around with. And nothing against Jack Eichel, but he plays for the enemy.
No, there's a lot against Jack Eichel.
Like, I know there is. Like, I don't hold anything personal against him. I get what he was going through in Boston. That's just like, hey, who has ownership of what I say about myself and my injury? That's a whole nother topic. But I really have a problem with him. But I just don't want to see behind the stuff of Vegas. I don't want to see those guys being happy. I don't want to see them doing anything fun because I want them to be miserable forever and always. So I'll have to watch, because I like Philip Forsberg, but I also have to watch the Vegas Golden Knights, unfortunately.
I would like to see who the true heroes are and who the true villains are in this lineup.
For Vegas?
For just top to bottom, all episodes.
Yeah,
like walking away.
Who do you like walk away liking more?
Like, even people you go in with the preconceived notion of, I like this guy, and then you watch him on tape be actual human, you're like, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
There's that one clip in the trailer where it's Nylander and he's just like lounging in his chair, and it's something about like, you're a winner or something like that, and he's just like, yeah. I'm like, bro, you haven't won anything. So is that someone? And walking away with people you're going to like. What about walking away with people that you're not going to like?
Yeah.
That too. So I can't wait for this thing to start. Just a couple weeks and we'll get to watch it. So, all right, last thing to get to, and that is the NHL players poll from the Athletic. They did they polled the fans, and now they poll the players, and we'll kind of get through this and see some of their answers. Some interesting stuff there. So we'll do that right after this. Let's hear from Indeed, and we're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. And if you need to hire, then you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work and use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So join over the 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent. And listeners of Locked On Avalanche will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and support Locked On Avalanche by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. That's Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. And if you need to hire, you need Indeed. All right, let's get to this player poll that the Athletic did. They do this every offseason. There's a couple of questions in here that they asked both. They asked the fans when we did the fan one, and obviously the players. It starts with the no state income tax one. That's kind of like a hot topic in the offseason. And they overwhelmingly said, or the question is, should the NHL address the advantages teams have in the no state income tax states? And 62.5% said no. So I'm with them. I didn't really think it's that much of an issue right now. Maybe something to just keep in the back of your mind if it continues for the next 10 years or something like that. But I think the players are on board with like, we don't need to really address anything right now.
Yeah, and the contrast between fan poll and player poll, you got to keep in mind there is a players union, and this sounds like a very players union answer.
Yes. Should the NHL address LTIR and tweak that rule, like perhaps adding a playoff salary cap? This was another question that was asked in the fan poll. Overwhelmingly, players say yes, it needs to be addressed. Almost 72%. So I think owners love it. If you ask the owners, I'm sure the owners would be like, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
But players, I don't know, and I'm gotta assume it's the opponent. Like if you're going up against a team that has utilized LTIR, that cannot make you happy. So I think there's enough players there to say like that have been on the opposite side of it to be like, we need to address something.
Yeah, if you're telling me I got to play 70 to 80 games to get my team to the playoffs, but then you look at somebody who's played 15 and LTIR is utilized and they show up for the playoffs and they're fresh and you're tired, yeah, that's got to bother me.
Yeah. Yep. Is it fair that the Four Nations is being dubbed as a return of best on best hockey when countries like Russia, Slovakia, Germany, Czechia are excluded? And 63% said that it is fair as to be dubbed as the return of best on best. And there's something they said in a little blurb here, which is true. The NHL didn't want to do this if a country could not field a team that was all NHL players. So they didn't want to have those players from other leagues within that country playing in this. So that's why it's dubbed best on best and why it's only 4 countries and not more. So it's funny because Leon Draisaitl is just like, I'll take the 2 weeks off,
Yeah.
which is maybe dangerous for beneficial to him.
Yeah, I'm glad they mentioned this because this is why you are not getting another World Cup of hockey, and they kicked that can down the road till I think 2028. It's because they just don't have enough to fill out the rosters currently.
Yeah. Should Arizona, Atlanta, both or neither get another crack at an expansion team? 53% said Arizona. 28% said none of them. None of those cities, surprisingly. And Atlanta, 3% that came in last. So the players are like, had your shot, Atlanta. Nope, we're not going back there. Oh, hang on.
Yeah, I agree. Atlanta, you had your chance, and like it's not buzzing like it was maybe a decade ago in Atlanta. So
Mhm.
not Atlanta. In Arizona, it's probably a cool place to go, but just
Yeah.
you're not going to carry it. And does it look like Utah's much of an upgrade? So
Yeah.
don't.
Should the NHL implement a backcourt violation in 3-on-3? You knew this was going to go in this direction. 74% said no. So players do not want to do that. You can kind of understand why. That's really not surprising there.
Nope. That's a union answer right there. They don't want
Yeah,
that changed at all.
Should NHL officials speak to reporters after the game? 63% said yes. I really wish they would make this a reality. Like, it's not something that we're just looking to crucify refs, and I don't think they would be. I think, if they met the media would be respectful. But sometimes you just want an answer to something. What's wrong with that? What is wrong with stating your opinion or what you saw, and then we can include that in how we talk about it and look at how a play went. I just really wish they would do this.
And this is something that came up in our interview with Dater. It sounds like this is a PR issue from the league because it sounds like they're very selective on who actually gets to talk. And when they find somebody that's a good soundbite, they're going to run it in the ground. And if you're not going to get a referee to say something that can mess something up and be an issue or a headline, so they're not going to do that.
Yeah. And then the last two is which captain other than your own would you most like to play with, and which coach other than your own would you most like to play with? Captain, I think this was rigged. It's a tie at first between Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby, specifically 34.3%. So they tied for first. Although I also see how you would want to play for or with either one of those guys too.
No, put me with Sidney Crosby all day long.
But would you say that 10 years ago?
Yeah, Sidney Crosby has emotion. I just don't want to play and be accountable with Connor McDavid, where nothing's good enough.
See, I think like 10 years ago, you wouldn't have said that. You would have said somebody else that's in the situation Crosby is now, kind of at the twilight of his career. And I'll ask you this question in another 10 years about Connor McDavid and see if your tone has changed.
McDavid's going to be a hard sell for me. Like, even at his worst, like you could see the human side of Crosby. McDavid, he literally gets on my nerves with how just how he carries himself in the games.
And then the coach one, other than your own, who'd you like to play for? John Cooper pretty much running away with this, 39%. Paul Maurice at 27%. Other was 15%. Joel Quenneville is on here at 6%. That was surprising to me.
That's a former Av coach.
Yeah, I mean, what they're going through right now, he's like, and I know, like, I'm not going to go down that road.
I know.
You can say how much he was at fault for that or not at fault for that. Even if it was not a lot, he was still involved in some capacity. So do you hold that against him and saying like, oh, I don't want to play for him? People seem to want to play, and he's not even a coach in the league right now, but people say that they would still play for him.
I plead the fifth on this one.
Yeah, that's a tough one. He's tied with Brindamore, believe it or not, and Jim Montgomery.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
I knew you were going to love that.
Can we get through an episode without Rod the Pod?
Oh, man. Hilarious. So, so there's your responses from the player poll from The Athletic. Always interesting stuff there. Quickly, the last thing we got here, we were talking about yesterday on yesterday's episode, the owl that is living outside of my window right now. He or she is out there right now again. And I said, let's name this bad boy. And I got a lot of responses. And I was just going to go through some of them right now. The one that I got a couple of was Howler, obviously, with Owl, which makes all the sense in the world. Former mascot. There was a couple other here. One, this is kind of created. One is it said Bennington for shrieking all of the damn time.
No.
And it's like, I like that, but I also like animals, and I can't name an animal after something that I kind of despise in Jordan Bennington. Creative, but I can't go down that road. No.
My daughter actually watched the episode yesterday and
Okay.
said you should name him Screech.
Ooh, that is a good one.
So
That in wow, and kind of in memory of almost. Yeah, that's not a bad one. I like where she's going with that. Owlander Georgiev was another one.
perfect.
Kate sent a bunch in. Samuel Gerard. Pavel Francois. Alexander Georgiev. I got that like 3 times. Ross Cowlton. P.E. Owlmar. She's going totally with names here. Cowell McCarr and Avalanche.
You know,
So, yeah.
maybe you should go with Alexander Georgiev, and then the owl will be out at the end of the year.
Oh, that is cruel. You're a cruel man. But I like the Samuel Gerard.
That's
I
awesome.
like a Samuel G.
Locks
like
were not out of the tree.
Yeah, but I think a howler is just too good.
Yeah.
So we'll give it another day. If anybody has other last minute ones they want to throw in, we'll take it. Owl, excuse me, Owl Avalanche. I like it, just doesn't roll off the tongue. It's a tongue twister, but I don't know. We'll see. But that is going to wrap it up for today's episode, everybody. So thank you for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. I really want to know what people think about your Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid. Like in 10 years, we'd be saying the same thing about the disdain people have for, because I think people did that with Crosby. You did not like Sidney Crosby.
This is not a personality poll. This is you're playing along with him.
How would you not want to play with Connor McDavid, dude?
Easy.
That's just sitting on the sidelines excitement. Well, we'll see. I mean, we'll get Sidney Crosby over here with the Avalanche and things will be,
of course.
That'll be all fun. So, all right. We're going to wrap it up. So thank you for tuning in, making this your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. And we're one day closer to getting Sidney Crosby on the Colorado Avalanche.